Welcome to another episode of Failing Success. I'm your host, Chad Kalecki with Cosmic Design. And today on the show, we have Louis Holzman. He is with a company called Altittude Marketing, and he's a director of business development for them. So Louis, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So what is an experience you've had where there was just a major mistake or failure that led to an eventual success for you with either in this company or another?
We'll start with Altitude here. And I think something that we can trace back to our success. So I've been with Altitude for 7 years now. The company's 19 years old. And as every company does, starts with the founders and the C's levels going out there in their networks and making connections and trying to grow the business that way. But that really only scales so far. And so really my role when I was brought on was being able to take that to another level. And I remember the question I asked our CEO when first joining was, well, what happens if you're not getting leads in through the website, or if that's the dominant source of lead generation? So, it's a good question. And so that really made us focus on how are we going to scale this outside of just networks, referrals, and the trickle of leads that would come in. And so fast forward 7 years ago versus 7 years to today, we've seen a ton of success practicing what we preach, being able to build organic sustainability of inbound lead generation. About 92% of our net new business every year comes in through our website. And so really targeted and being able to grow and scale. We're coming off the heels of our best year yet as a company, grew about 46% last year. And so it's just a testament to compounded efforts over 7-8 years at this point. But if we wouldn't have had that initial kind of aha moment of, man, we're kind of scratching and clawing and working harder, not necessarily smarter. What do we got to do here? We might still be spinning our wheels.
So that aha moment, would you mind getting into that a little more?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, really, I think it was a perfect storm of, we're in 2023, so call it 2016, 2017, the internet and the usage of it being so popular. It's no longer a fad, wondering if the internet is going to work or not, right? And so now figuring out how do you put the internet to work to be able to start building and scaling your business. And maybe that sounds like obvious in 2023 here, but in 2015, many businesses were still kind of figuring out what did that look like. There was Web 2.0 wasn't even out yet, right? So really understanding how we needed to kind of be the leader within. If we wanted to differentiate ourselves, there's tons of marketing agencies out there where we know that, right? But so if we wanted to be able to differentiate ourselves and carve out our niche in business to business marketing and really kind of own that subsector, we knew that we needed to get to work yesterday on really smart content, authoritative content, but then also the technical sides of that, like looking at the algorithms, expertise, authority, and trust. What is Google looking for? How are we able to really generate and build that blend of content and technical expertise to start building up that authoritative profile to attract a general broader, to give us the volume that we would need to get to the niche people that we know we're going to be able to do actual business with. So, fast forward now to today, we're doing all different types of things with technologies, and AI is out, and there's ChatGPT, and there's all these different things that is kind of taking the game to the next level. And we're trying to continue to be on that forefront and utilizing that within our lead generation and pipeline efforts.
So how have you guys adapted to all these new technologies and keep the traffic coming?
Would be lying to say that it's not a day in and day out challenge, right? Everything from our chief strategy officer to myself down through some of the interns that we have with us, really pushing the needle forward on innovation and making sure that we're understanding what we were doing yesterday, what we were doing last week. What we were doing 6 months ago certainly is not necessarily relevant, and trying to always practice what we preach on ourselves. So we're pretty technology agnostic, platform agnostic, I should say, when it comes to marketing automation, CRMs, how that integrates with the website. How do we build attribution funnels? So how are we taking that into data visualization and being able to really, generate tool that can, in a lot of ways, build a predictive revenue funnel. And that's kind of the golden ticket, if you will. I'm not saying that we've totally figured out and solved it, but we're about 98% of the way there. I don't know if you ever quite get to 100. And so some really smart people, really dedicated people. We use technology, we use automation, but at the end of the day, it's a tool. All of these things are tools. It's not something that we are replacing ourselves with. You still need logic. You still need to think. You still need to understand what is truly valuable to the target audience that you're going after, and then use the right tools to put that in place to get the actions out of it that you want to help streamline and automate a process in a way, shave some time down and get more out of it. But again, you're not just totally removing somebody or some buddies. It still comes down to really smart people.
Lewis, along your career, has there been a moment where personally something happened and you were just kind of leveled at the time?
Yeah, man. It's a great question. And a lot of that probably goes back to some of my earliest years. Even before graduating college, I was doing my first entree into sales. Really, I was with a network marketing company. I was selling nutritional products, and there was a lot around that. It was a totally different way of thinking and a lot of fall on your face, but I was growing and learning in different ways through building teams, traveling, doing speaking engagements, and being able to help really determine and define what does in a direct sales D2C type of relationship, how do you really influence someone without it being like there's still a benefit for them and not just for you to push a product, right? So that was a decent 2-3 year journey, and doing things differently than a lot of people and peers my age at the time were doing. It was a different level of thinking, really introduced me into a lot of professional development material that allowed me to really propel into thinking about where I wanted to take my life and how I'd be able to kind of use that as a initial vehicle to jump off into the next stages of my career, getting into technology, getting into a little bit more of a consultative type of sale, in the B2B lane, working through some initial startups and helping to grow pipelines that way, which ended up getting me to here where I'm at with Altittude, after kind of cutting my teeth with some of those smaller, less established companies, but also being able to really help them grow over the course of 16, 20 months towards an acquisition. And then I found myself here. And then since then have some different things with commercial real estate and investment and things like that I continue to push the needle on in a totally different subsection than Altittude here.
So is that something that's your personal portfolio?
Correct. Yeah. 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 So I have some multifamily housing here in Allentown. And so looking to be able to build that passive income stream as I continue to build my earned income stream here with my job. And definitely blessed to be able to have that flexibility here at Altittude to be able to kind of work both those channels in their own separate ways.
Right. Well, it's great that you also have that diversity, right, in your portfolio, right? You can't like it's good for people to do that. Like, hey, you can have a great company and work for that great company, and you should, but have that backup plan, right? That passive income. You never know what happens.
Yeah. And you never know what happens. And it's also one of those things where Altittude is phenomenal. It's a great company, number 4 best places to work in PA last year. So I really have very little complaints, and I'm blessed about my job. But my business with real estate, it's not a job, and how that value is determined isn't necessarily through a paycheck, and it's not necessarily through time. It's a different way of thinking in creating wealth and in creating value. And so that's really something that over time and compounding efforts, certainly want to continue to grow, and also can kind of run simultaneous to my job and an earned income that is more time based. And so, working those at a similar angle, who knows? You never know where it could go, but also it could go where I could continue to do both of them for a long time and be happy with that as well. So we'll see how life plays out.
Yeah. What pushed you into getting your first property?
Boy, financial stability, I guess. At the time, I was fresh out of college and I was living in my parents' house still, and I thought, man, like, what is the best way for me to move out of mom and dad's house? I was like, oh, a lot of my friends are renting. Like, I can't, I don't, I don't know about buying a house at this point. Like, I'm a single guy. But then I looked at and had a mentor actually who from high school who was my high school lacrosse coach, but also a real estate investor. And he was like, well, hey, why don't you think about, buying a multi-unit? I said, okay. And then once he like introduced that concept to me, I didn't really have to think much of it. I was like, yeah, I get it. I'll live in one unit, I'll rent out the other, and it'll cut out my living expenses. It's great. Sounds good. So that's pretty much where it started, and did that, renovated the units, decreased the operational cost of the asset, increased the income from what I had bought it on, and had it for about 5 years till I flipped it into the next thing within the portfolio. So yeah, it worked out well, and we'll kind of continuing that same thing, but going bigger size units as we continue to scale.
What advice would you give somebody who's just starting to try and get into that, building their real estate?
Start just, and not even just with real estate. Let's try when you're trying to. So many people, oh, I want to move here, or I want to go this, I want to go try to do this. It's like, well, stop saying you want to, like, go do it, like make it happen. And oh, I don't have the skills, I don't have the expertise, I don't know. You can come at me with all the time, all the money, all the different types of excuses that you do or don't have. But at the end of the day, if you're not putting yourself out there and actually going and doing it, there's some level of fear that is behind your mind that is bringing those excuses to the forefront. So you got to break down those barriers first to be able to really, just jump in feet first, because that's where you're going to learn. That's where, to your first question, where you're going to fall on your face and you're going to be like, God damn. And then, a year, 5 years later, whatever it might be, you look back and be like, if I didn't fall that hard on my face, I wouldn't be where I am here today. So you got to go do it. And for the real estate thing specifically, I guess it would be just walking properties. And because in order to buy something, you got to know what you're looking at. And you're not going to know that unless you start actually going and walking them. I was under contract 3 times before I actually bought my first property, and I probably went through 200, over the course of 2 years, just like before I was even ready to like even underwrite anything, just so I knew what I was looking at. I knew what I was expecting, so that when the right thing did come along, I was like, yep, that's it. Let's go.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, also don't be afraid to fall on your face. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a good tip for most things.
For sure. For sure. Wear a mouth guard. Don't push
Yeah, we're on the card. So Lewis, if our listeners wanted to reach out to you personally or to Altittude, how would they go ahead and do that?
Yeah, so I actually went a little rogue at the end of last year here, and I deactivated all my social media. It was just something that I needed to take a break from, and really needed to kind of pull back a little bit. That said, I guess the one social media I continue to have is LinkedIn, so you can find me there. Lewis, I guess it's Lewis Holzman on LinkedIn. But with Altittude, Lewis S at altitudemarketing.com is definitely where you would be able to find me for there. And depending on how you find me and where the conversation goes, we can open it up a little bit further from there.
Thank you, Lewis, for being on the show. And thank you, everybody, for listening to Failing Success. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow and rate the show, like, comment, and subscribe for more great content. I'm your host, Chad Kalecki with Cosmic Design, and thanks for listening.